Welcome back to Simright Fashion Academy YouTube channel for another interesting tutorial. In this tutorial, I'll be teaching you how to sew this side gathered gown you are seeing right here on the video. It also have ruffle sleeves and a band on the sleeve. This is what I came out with. You can see how beautiful this gown looks on me. So you can actually make it longer. You can also make it short. I just made mine a little 3/4 length, and I think I like what I have. I am making use of 4.5 yards of Duchess fabric. So you can use Duchess, you can use crepe. So this 4.5 yards right now, I'm going to fold it to cut out the center front length. So the center front, I'm folding it according to the largest part of my body. So if your bust is the largest, take the measurement, divide by 4. If your hip is the largest, you take the measurement. So for me, I used my hip circumference, divide by 4. Then I added 2 inches to it. That is 14 inches. So I folded my fabric as 14 inches. You can see I've cut it out. So I just want to turn to the back so I'll be able to mark comfortably. Sorry, I have cold, but you have to listen very carefully, okay? And follow the video instructions. You'll understand what I'm doing right here. So out of that 4.5 yards, I just placed on fold my hip circumference, divide by 4, and I added 2 inches to it for the seam allowance and for ease. So my measurement is 14 inches because my hip is 48, divide by 4 is 12 plus 2 is 14 inches. Now you are going to create 1 inch border line. My border line is 1 inch. I'll place my tape on that 1 inch and I'll mark my chest line at 9 inches, my waistline at 17 inches, my hip line at 29 inches, and the full length, you can use the full length as 59. Actually, I used a very full length, but later I decided to make it 52 inches. So the length is by choice. Now I'm going to highlight all my lines accordingly. So I'm highlighting my chest line, my shoulder line. So after highlighting all these lines, here is my shoulder line. This is the chest line. This is the waistline, your hip line, and the full length. Alright, so we'll begin to take the measurements accordingly. So I'm going to take my shoulder, divide by 2, which is 7.5. Then I'll add 1/2 inch, which is 8 inches. So I'll place the 8 inches on my chest line. The 1/2 inch is for seam allowance. I came down by 1 inch. The neck width is 3.5. The neck depth for the front is 3.5. So I'm going to connect my shoulder slant line. Then connect a straight line from that shoulder slant to the chest line for my armhole. So make sure you secure with your pins because this fabric wobbles a lot. This is Duchess fabric, so if you don't hold down with your pins, it wobbles. So I'm connecting 3.5 by 3.5 of my neck width and neck depth for the front. The neck depth for the back is 1 inch. I'll connect the 1 inch to the 3.5 inches neck width. Then I'm going to get the midpoint of my armhole. I'll go in by 1/2 inch for the front armhole. I'm going to connect to the tip of my shoulder. And on the chest line, I'm going to take my bust circumference, divide by 4, which is 10 inches. Then I added 1.5 inches. Add 1.5 for ease and for seam allowance. So I'm going to connect from that 1/2 inch to the 1.5 inch for ease and for seam allowance. So after connecting, we are going to connect from that midpoint for the back armhole. I'll connect from the midpoint on the straight line. I'll connect the back armhole. Sorry, my chalk is not really showing very well, but if you follow my hands, you understand what I'm doing. On the waistline, I'm taking my waist circumference divide by 4. You also add 1.5 inches for ease and for seam allowance. 0.5 inches for the ease and 1 inch is for your seam allowance. Then I'm going to connect from the waist to the chest. Next, you come over to the hip line. You are going to take your hip circumference divide by 4 and add 1.5 inches to it as well. Then I'm going to connect from the waist to the hip. So whatever you have on the hip line, I'm going to take the measurement of what I have on the hip line right now. So I'm trying to secure with my pins. So after that, you are going to take the measurement of everything you have on the hip line. I have 13.5 inches. I'll place that 13.5 inches on the hem. Then I'm going to connect a straight line from the hem line to the hip line. So I'll just go ahead and run a straight line all the way to the hip line, as you can see. So right now, I'm going to place my tape on the waistline and count 5 inches downwards. So 5 inches downwards from my waistline is 22 inches. I marked it on the side of the dress. And on the hip line, you are going to come in by 6 inches. If you're on a smaller size, come in by 5 inches. If you're on a plus size, come in by 7. If you're on a medium size, come in by 6 inches. So I'm going to connect my 6 inches to that 22 inches line I marked on the side. I will take the 6 inches on the hip line. I'll place it on the hem line. Then I'm going to connect a straight line. From that hem line, I'll connect a straight line all the way. So I kept marking 6 inches, so I'll be able to get a straight line. I'll mark it all the way down. Alright, so that is it. Now, we are going to add 0.5 inch for seam allowance on the shoulder seam line. You add 0.5 inch. Now, we are done. We are going to cut out our pattern now for the front. I will place it on the back too. So I will go ahead to cut only the outer armhole. The outer marking, that is what I'm cutting. I'll cut the shoulder seam line, then cut only the back neckline. Cut only the back neckline. I'll go ahead and cut on the side. Once I get to that curve, I'll follow the curve and cut it out to the hem line. So we are going to replace that part with our gathers. So I'll cut it all the way to the end of the dress. So after cutting out this part, we are going to place this particular front pattern on the back pattern and cut out the back. So I have placed my fabric right now. So this time around, I used my hip circumference divided by 4. I added 4 inches, 4 more inches. So I folded it as 16 inches instead of 14 inches because of the zipper allowance. So I went ahead and folded it as 16 inches. So after folding it, The next I'm going to do is to mark out my zipper allowance. My zip allowance is 1 inch. So I'll proceed to mark 1 inch all the way. So I will mark it all the way at the center back until I get to the hemline at 1 inch. Alright, so after marking it, we'll bring back the front dress and place the center front on that 1 inch line. But don't forget to also create your border line of 1 inch on top, just like we did for the front. So I placed my 1 inch border line. So I'm going to let the shoulder seam line touch the border line at 1 inch and touch the zipper line before I secure with my pins. So here you can see me securing it with my pins right now. So make sure you arrange the border line very well, and the center front, arrange it on the 1 inch zip line too. After I'm done arranging, we are going to start highlighting the zipper contour line. So I'll come over to the waistline. I'm going to extend the waist line to the zipper point. So those lines, I'm going to extend them so we'll be able to contour the zipper line. I will extend the neckline for the back. I will also extend the waistline on the side because we are going to replace the zipper line. So the zipper contour line is 1 inch. I'll also extend my hip line. So we are going to contour the back right now to avoid zip bulge. So you can see how I place my 1 inch from the waist to nothing to the neckline. I also placed 1 inch from the waistline to nothing on the hip line. So I have contoured that part. So we are going to cut off this part right now. But we'll go ahead and replace the zipper contour line of 1 inch on the side. So on the waistline on the side, I'm going to mark 1 inch to replace that part. Then I will check what I also took off on the chest line. I have about ½ inch. I will replace the ½ inch on the chest line. Then I'm going to connect from that chest line to the waistline for replacement. Then from that point of the curve, I have a little like ½ inch. I'll also replace that ½ inch on the side. Then I'm going to place my pattern ruler and connect it back. So for the hip line, nothing was taken, you can see, so we are not replacing anything. So the back dress is ready right now. The next thing we are going to do is to cut it out. So I'll go ahead and cut out following the chalk lines. I will cut out the neckline to the zipper extension. Next, we are going to cut out the zipper bulge. So I'll go ahead and cut out the zipper bulge accordingly. I'll cut it all the way we marked it. Then open up the folded edges from that point all the way down. That is the zipper allowance. After that, we'll begin to cut the sides where we replace the zipper allowance. I'll go ahead and cut it out. So I'll go all the way down. I will cut it out like that. Alright, so that is the cutting right now. So we are done. The next we are going to do is to take off the back piece, so we'll be able to cut out the neckline for the front and the armhole for the front. So I'll go ahead and set the back piece aside. Now this is the front. I'm going to secure with my pin, so I'll be able to cut out the front neck depth. So I'll go ahead and cut the front neck and cut the armhole. So the armhole, we went in by 0.5 inch. I'm going to take it off for the front. Now the front and the back piece are ready. So we are going to cut out the lining the same way we cut out the fabric. So you can use a lycra lining, but I used a Duchess lining. I just used a low quality Duchess, and I've already cut it out, as you can see, the same way I cut the front and the back. So everything is the same for the lining and for the fabric. Alright, so we'll begin to stitch the necklines right now. So but before that, we are going to take the measurement of where we are going to attach the ruffles. So you mark from the waist hip line. So from the hip line, we are going to come up by 3 inches. Then you measure what you have from that point. I have 8 inches. So that 8 inches right now, I'm going to multiply it by 2 for the front and back. I have 16. Then I'll multiply by 4 for the ruffles. I have 64. So this 64 inches gave me about 2 yards. So I used 2 yards to gather on that space after joining. So we'll keep the calculation aside and proceed to the stitching. So we'll get to the ruffles. When we get to the ruffles, you understand how we ruffle the 2 yards. Now I'm going to place right side to right side of the neck, the lining and the fabric. You can also use a facing. If you want to use a facing, fine, but I prefer to use full lining because we are working with Duchess. So here I'm securing the neckline with my pins. I will do the same for the other side too. You go ahead and secure with your pins the neckline. We'll go over to the machine right now, and we are going to stitch 1/2 inch for the neckline, then top stitch as well. So here is the back neckline. I'm stitching 1/2 inch all the way. Then for the front, I'm going to also place the front right side to right side, the lining and the fabric right side to right side. Then we'll go ahead and stitch the neckline too. So make sure you secure with your pins because this fabric really wobbles a lot. So I secure everything with my pin before I went to stitch. So after pinning, next is to stitch 1/2 inch on the neckline. I went ahead to stitch 1/2 inch on the neckline. So here I am done. I'm going to make notches on the neckline. So make sure you make notches on the neckline to relax it. Then I flip all my seams to the lining and top stitch and give it a good press. I did the same. I also notched the back and flip all the seams and top stitch and gave it a good press. So you can see what I got after I'm done sewing. So I'm going to reduce the lining by 1 inch. So make sure you reduce your lining by 1 inch. No matter the length you are working with, reduce your lining by 1 inch. So I went ahead and reduced my lining by 1 inch. So I'll go over to stitch that part. So I'm going to lay it right side to right side right now. You can see it's shorter. The lining is shorter right now. So I'll open it up and lay it right side to right side. So I'll be able to stitch half an inch. So I went ahead to stitch half an inch. And then I also top stitch and gave it a good press. So you can see what it looks like right there. So I secure the sides with my pin. So I'll go over to the machine and hold the lining and the fabric together. I'll use half an inch to hold them together. So after stitching, this is what I got. So I have the front in place right now. So you can see the front piece is ready. So the next we'll go over to sew is the back piece. So for the back piece, I'm done with the neckline. So I'm also going to reduce the lining by 1 inch and repeat the same thing I did for the front piece. We actually need a neat finishing at that point, so I'll go ahead and reduce 1 inch for my lining for the both of them. So next we will also place it right side to right side. We'll place right side to right side and stitch half an inch and top stitch. So this is what we got, as you can see. So I gave it a good press. So the next is to stitch the sides. Just stitch only the sides where we are going to attach the ruffle. So for the center back, we are going to place our zipper on the center back. So I went ahead to measure my zipper. Next, I'm going to place the center back together, secure with my pin. Then we are going to stitch 1 inch. So make sure you align the zipper part very well so your zip relaxes nice and flat for you. So I kept arranging it to be sure my zipper space is together. Now I'm going to mark 1 inch. From that point, I'm going to close it up by 1 inch. So I'll go ahead and mark 1 inch for at the center back for my zip. So after marking this 1 inch, I'll go over to the machine right now to stitch from that point to the hem line at 1 inch. So that is why I'm marking the 1 inch. So I will stitch and give it a good press. Then we sew my zip. So here I'm done stitching. I pressed it down. Next, I'm going to also mark 1 inch to sew my zip. So I'm using an invisible zip right there. So you can use an ordinary zip or invisible zip. So I went ahead and marked 1 inch. So I'll go over to my machine right now. After marking the 1 inch on both sides, I'll go over to the machine to stitch accordingly. So I will sew my zipper on this center back right now. So I'll open up my zip and place it the way it should be and stitch my zip. So after stitching the zip, this is what I got. You can see how neat and beautiful it's looking right there. Next, I'll place the shoulder seam line together. I'm going to use the lining of 1 to wrap it up. So that's how I usually like to sew my shoulder seam line. So I'll go over, wrap it up and stitch half an inch. So after stitching the both, you can see I have neat finishings inside and outside. Now we are going to close up the sides with 1 inch. So I'll go over to close the sides of this dress with 1 inch. After closing the sides of the dress, we are going to start sewing the ruffles. So right now, we are going to go back to that calculation. So remember, we measured on the side 8 inches multiplied by 2. So we are going to go back to cut the fabric. So we are making use of 2 yards. So I just have 2 yards of duchess right here. So these 2 yards, I'll put it together. You will put it together on the length. The length is 60 inches. When you put it together on the length, you have 30 inches. The folded part is the 2 yards. So this folded part now, I'm going to place it on fold again. So just follow what I'm doing right here. You will get it right. So once you place it on fold, then we are going to bring in the side of that dress right now. So these 2 yards we have placed on fold right now. I'm going to place the side of the dress the way you see me do. So make sure the end of the dress is touching the end of the 2 yards of fabric, and you take it up to the folded parts. Then we are going to highlight that curve. You go ahead and highlight the curve, okay? So we are going to cut out that curve. So that is the part we are going to attach to the side of this dress, and then go ahead and ruffle. So I'll just quickly cut it out. Then after cutting the curvy parts, you go ahead and open up the folds. So but meanwhile, make sure you notch the center, the side, okay? So that is the side of the dress. I've notched it, and now from that notch I'm going to open up the folded part. So when I separate this folded part right now, we'll be using these 2 yards at 30 inches length for the ruffle on both sides. So if you want a longer length, you can get more duchess for this project, okay? And follow the same instruction and make it longer. So I'll go over to my machine to gather. I will gather all the way, but I'm going to stop on the side. So I'm putting the dress together first. Before I gather, I'll put it together. We are going to take the measurement of 7 inches, not 8 inches, because we have sewn 1 inch already. So you measure 7 inches and create your notch. So that is where the gathers will start, on that notch. So from the hem, please measure to the notch. There I have 25 inches. So I'll bring back my dress. From the hem of this dress, I'll put it together too. From the hem, you are going to also measure 26, because you are going to hem the down part. So I'll add 1 inch to that 25 inches and mark 26 inches. So at that 26 inches, please make a notch. I went ahead and made my notch. So that is where my gathers will stop. So from that notch, I'm going to gather all the way to the center where I made the notch. I will gather from the other side to the center too. So I use my pin to indicate the center part. So by the time I gather from one end and the other end, they will all get to the center. So I'm still gathering, as you can see right there. So after gathering on one side, I went over to the other side and I started to ruffle too. So from the notch, I started to ruffle. So I'll go ahead and ruffle from there to the other side as well. Alright, that is it. So the next we are going to do is to bring back the dress. So the side of that dress, we'll open the side of that dress where we have the joining and secure it with my pin on the notch of the gathers. Then I'll also pin the other notch where the gathers will stop. That is where our gathers will stop. So I'll go ahead and secure with my pin. I'll go over to the other side. We have the notch where the gathers will stop, secure with my pin. I'm going to stitch from the hemline. So I'm going to fold in the 1 inch for hemming, the 1 inch for hemming, and place it right on the hem of the back. Then I'm going to stitch half an inch like that. So after gathering the boat, this is what I got. So you can see how beautiful this dress is actually looking right here. So we are going to sew the sleeves right now. So for the sleeves, I have 30 inches. It's not up to 1 yard, okay, just 30 inches. That is what is remaining from the 4.5 yards. So I placed it on fold. When I place it on fold, I'll have a length of 15 inches. So I'll place it on another fold. So right now, I'm going to get my basic sleeve. After folding it this way, you make a notch at the sleeve grain line. That is the center or sleeve grain line. Then I'll go ahead and get my basic sleeve. I'll take it to the end of my sleeve like that and curve into it. So we are going to curve into it, then the rest of the other part will be gathered. So I'm going to cut out that part right now. So this part will go into the armhole while the rest of it will be gathered. So I'm going to open up the folded edge because this is going to serve as 2 sleeves for us. So I'll open it up. It's going to serve as 2 sleeves for us. So now we have the 2 sleeves. Then I'm going to make notches on the down part too, on the center sleeve grain line. So I'll go over to the machine right now. I'm going to gather. I'll gather all the way on the up and on the down. So after gathering, this is what I got. So here is the upper sleeve. You can see I did not gather up to that point. Okay. So next, I'm going to, so this is the sleeve. The down part, we are going to put a band. So my band width length is 15 inches. The width is 3.5 inches. So I'm going to place it on fold and get the midpoint of my band. I'll place a notch at the midpoint of my band and the midpoint of the down part of this sleeve. I'm going to match them together. So I'll secure with my pins. I'll go over to stitch. So this is how I'm going to stitch. From the gathered part, I'll keep gathering and stitch to the end. So after stitching, this is what I got. So I'll put it together to get the midpoint. I've already sewn a belt. So this belt depends on the width you like. So for me, the width I used here is 2 inches. So I'm going to tuck in that part and top stitch on it or use my hemming gum. So this belt, I'm going to sew it at the center. So this is how I'm going to place it. I'll place it at the center and top stitch on it. So after I pinned it this way, so I'll be able to top stitch and tie my bow. So here I'm done. So I've tied my beautiful bow. Next is to put it together and sew the size of the sleeve at 1/2 inch. So after sewing, this is what I got for my sleeve. So now we are going to sew in the armhole part to the dress. So I brought the dress right now. I'm going to open up the zipper right now, and then I'm going to turn the dress to the wrong side and insert my sleeve and pin it on the shoulder seam line. After pinning on the shoulder seam line, I'll also pin on the armhole line. So make sure you align them. Then you go over to your machine. You are going to start stitching from the armhole line. So as you are stitching, make sure you put the armholes together, the lining and the fabric together. So here is what I got on my sleeves, and you can see they are looking so beautiful. I believe this class was helpful to you despite the bad voice. Just follow the video instructions, you'll be able to sew this beautiful dress. So if you are new to this channel, please kindly subscribe, turn on your notification bell to receive more videos. Thanks for watching. Bye.